Imagine holding a fresh, crisp apple in one hand and a milk chocolate candy bar in the other. Both contain roughly the same amount of basic sugar molecules, yet, if eaten, one sends the liver into a state of emergency while the other provides a steady, safe release of energy. So, why does the exact same chemical substance act as a healthy fuel in one food and a slow acting poison in another? Today, we're looking past the nutrition label to see exactly how sugar changes our biology. We'll break down what sugar actually is, how it tricks your brain into wanting more, and how a hidden metabolic overload in the liver is driving a modern health crisis. To understand the effects, we must understand what sugar actually is. So, chemically, the classic white table sugar found in kitchens is a substance called sucrose. Sucrose is a disaccharide, which is just a fancy scientific term meaning it consists of two simple sugars bonded together. The first of the sugar is glucose, a flat hexagonal molecule that serves as the primary energy currency for nearly every living thing on Earth. The second sugar of the disaccharide is fructose. It's a pentagonal molecule found naturally in fruits and honey, which tastes significantly sweeter than glucose. So, sucrose is the technical term for sugar, and it's a disaccharide made of glucose and fructose. This leads us to the next logical question. How does the body digest this stuff? The digestion of sucrose is quick. Once it leaves the stomach and enters the small intestine, specialized enzymes snip the bond that holds glucose and fructose together, turning them into monosaccharides, which just means one free sugar molecule. From there are two monosaccharides that pass through the intestinal wall and enter the portal vein, which is a major blood vessel that acts as a direct, one-way highway straight to the liver. Once they arrive at the liver, the physiological pathways diverge. Glucose is polite, you could say, so the liver allows the majority of glucose to pass through into the general bloodstream, where muscles, organs, and the brain can easily absorb it to create ATP, which is otherwise known as energy for cells. Fructose, on the other hand, is not so polite, so over 90% of the fructose is pulled out of the blood on its very first pass through the liver. Essentially, the liver traps it, meaning the rest of the body barely gets a taste of it. The reason why fructose gets trapped and glucose doesn't has to do with how they're modified through digestion. So, in simple terms, you can think of glucose as having a two-way passport. It can modify and enter the liver for storage, or reverse this modification and flow out into the blood. Fructose, however, has a one-way stamp, so once the liver modifies it, it's chemically locked inside. Let's go back to the apple and candy bar from before. If all sugar contains both fructose and glucose, why is fruit considered a health food while candy is considered a metabolic hazard? The answer lies in the whole food matrix, and specifically a component called structural dietary fiber. When a person bites into an apple, the natural sugars are locked tight inside microscopic plant cell walls made of fiber. The human digestive system cannot easily break down fiber, so it takes hours for the stomach and intestines to squeeze the sugar out of those fibers. This slow digestion acts like a metabolic drip feed. The liver receives a slow, steady trickle of fructose that it can easily process. But with a candy bar, soda, or fast food, these natural fibers have been stripped away, and without the fiber to slow things down, the stomach empties almost instantly. The small intestine is flooded with a tidal wave of sugars. This massive, sudden surge rushes down the portal highway, slamming the liver with a concentrated dose of fructose and glucose all at once, triggering a metabolic overload. A metabolic overload just refers to consuming more sugar than your body can immediately use or safely store, which leads to some harmful effects that we'll come back to. You may have heard that sugar is an addiction and wondered if that's actually true. Well, it is. The human brain is wired to seek out calorie dense foods. This is because in the past, food was not so readily available, so it was advantageous to seek out calorie dense food since you weren't sure when your next meal would be. To ensure humans sought this out, the brain evolved the mesocortical limbic pathway, commonly known as the brain's reward system. When a person eats sugar, the brain releases a feel good chemical called dopamine in two distinct, highly coordinated waves. The instant sugar touches the tongue, wave 1 begins. Sweet taste receptors depolarize, sending a lightning fast electrical signal through the cranial nerves to the brainstem. This triggers an immediate burst of dopamine in the ventral tegmental area and the nucleus accumbens, creating an instant rush of dopamine. Once the sugar travels down into the stomach, specialized nutrient centers detect the incoming calories and send a secondary signal up the vagus nerve directly to the brain, releasing a second wave of dopamine that signals satisfaction. Here's where the addiction-like cycle begins. When a person frequently floods their system with high sugar foods, the brain attempts to protect itself from overstimulation by downregulating or shrinking its dopamine receptors. This is the classic definition of tolerance. Our brain does this because it wants to keep our body in a stable internal environment despite external disruptions. So, once the brain has built a tolerance to the heavy sugar intake, there will be fewer active receptors, meaning the same amount of sugar that gave you a ton of dopamine before will provide a lot less now. The individual now requires a larger and more frequent dose of sugar to achieve the exact same baseline of satisfaction as before. Simultaneously, high sugar intake weakens the prefrontal cortex, which is the brain's executive control center responsible for willpower and impulse control. This happens because the prefrontal cortex's regular signaling to stop eating is easily drowned out by the louder signal for a dopamine reward. When our body begins to crave more dopamine, we treat it as a more important signal than the one from the prefrontal cortex. But while your brain is riding out that double wave of dopamine, a different story is unfolding in your abdomen. So let's go back to those sugar molecules entering the liver. While glucose is slowly and carefully processed, fructose is met by an enzyme called ketohexokinase, or KHK for short, because that one is a mouthful. KHK has no emergency shut-off switch and runs 10 times faster than glucose processing. This rapid reaction is so violent that it drains the liver cells' energy resources, causing an immediate drop in cellular ATP. To cope with this energy crisis, the liver cell degrades its metabolic waste into uric acid. This acid generates intense mitochondrial stress, effectively putting a chokehold on the cell's ability to burn fat. You might know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, meaning it produces energy for cells. So, with its energy engine in a chokehold, the liver is forced to take all those excess sugars and convert it directly into fat through a pathway called de novo lipogenesis, which literally just means new fat creation. The liver begins to manufacture saturated palmative fats at an accelerated rate in order to prevent toxic sugar levels. Some of this fat is packaged into cholesterol and shipped into the blood, raising cardiovascular risk. But a massive portion of this newly synthesized fat simply gets stuck inside the livers. When the accumulated fat exceeds 5% of the liver's total weight, the individual has officially developed non alcoholic fatty liver disease, also known as NAFLD, a condition that was once rare but is now skyrocketing among young adults due to the rise of sugar saturated processed foods. It's estimated that 25 to 32% of the adult population worldwide is affected by this. You might have felt that even though it's high in calories, a high sugar fast food meal often leaves you hungry just a couple of hours later. This occurs primarily because sugar basically mutes the brain's primary fullness alarm, a hormone called leptin. Leptin is produced by fat cells. In a healthy body, as fat stores increase, fat cells release leptin into the bloodstream. Leptin crosses the blood-brain barrier, binds to receptors in the hypothalamus, and tells the brain, we have enough energy, turn down the appetite, and boost metabolism. But refined sugars disrupt this communication. First, the rapid blood sugar spike forces the pancreas to release a massive wave of insulin to clear glucose. Secondly, chronically high insulin levels lock the body into a state of fat storage. Third, as fat cells expand under the influence of insulin, they pump out a constant, overwhelming flood of leptin. Eventually, the brain's leptin receptors become desensitized to this constant flooding, similar to the tolerance we spoke about with dopamine receptors. The brain essentially goes deaf to the fullness signal, a state known as leptin resistance. Since the brain can no longer hear this signal, it falsely assumes that the body is starving. It responds by dropping the metabolic rate and triggering intense, frantic cravings for quick energy foods like sugar. Now we get to the ultimate question: how much sugar is actually safe to eat? The World Health Organization, or WHO for short, makes a distinction by targeting its strict limits specifically at free sugars. Free sugars include all monosaccharides and disaccharides added to foods by manufacturers, plus the sugars naturally present in fruit juices, concentrates, honey, and syrups. It does not apply to the natural sugars found inside intact whole fruits or vegetables. The WHO recommends keeping free sugars to less than 10% of the total daily energy intake. So, for example, a standard 2,000 calorie a day diet, this equals a max of 50 grams of sugar per day. However, the WHO does point out that cutting down to less than 5% or 25 grams per day provides significant protection against metabolic dysfunction. To put that in perspective, let's consider some everyday food items. A single 250 milliliter glass of lemonade contains up to 32 grams of free sugar. A single cup of commercial fruit yogurt contains up to 35 grams, and a single portion of breakfast cereal can contain anywhere from 11 grams to 30 grams. So, consuming one sweetened yogurt cup or a single glass of lemonade instantly pushes a person past their ideal threshold. But, as with most things, sugar is okay in moderation. This does not just mean you have to give up sweets forever. The human body is incredibly resilient, and simple adjustments can easily reset the brain's reward pathways. First, prioritize protein and fiber at every meal. Protein and fiber stabilize blood sugar, preventing the massive insulin spikes that drive leptin resistance and trigger rebound cravings. Second, swap liquid sugars for whole fruits. As discussed earlier, the natural fiber in whole fruits allows your liver to process the fructose safely and slowly. Third, try to avoid snacking. Give the body 3 to 4 hours of fasting between meals to allow insulin and leptin levels to drop back to baseline. This break helps the brain to regain its sensitivity to leptin, which over time turns down chronic hunger and cravings. Now, obviously, I know that sounds easier than it is. Undertaking a sugar reset and spacing out meals does not yield instant results, which makes it very hard. The first 2 to 5 days are biologically the most difficult. Your brain will be craving its typical dopamine hit, which may leave you with headaches, fatigue, and intense cravings. But human taste buds have a short life cycle of about 10 days until they shed and regrow. So, after roughly 10 days of monitoring your sugar intake and avoiding snacking, your palate will have undergone a complete reset. The taste buds will become far more sensitive to subtle flavors again, meaning naturally sweet whole foods like berries begin to taste much more satisfying and sweet. Simultaneously, the brain's dopamine receptors begin to resensitize, meaning the urgent cravings will start to diminish. By week 2, your energy levels will become more consistent again and your sleep quality will improve. So, it's not too late to monitor your sugar. And monitoring your sugar levels never needs to mean completely cutting it out. Sugar is a great energy source, especially in fruits, and nobody's perfect. I mean, I ate a handful of marshmallows this morning, so I can't be giving all this advice acting like I follow it perfectly. But it's most important to start healthy patterns, not achieve perfection. Sugar has been linked to so many problems in humans. I mean, it was never meant to be this readily available for us. We evolved to crave finding a patch of berries, not choosing between every flavor of candy on a shelf. Your liver is actually your largest internal organ and performs about 500 vital functions, so be nice to it. But that is it for my deep dive on sugar. I hope you enjoyed.